essentially what you're looking at here is this Visual Studio 2005 kind of theme here. We've got a toolbox that allows us to choose, select, translate, rotate, or scale, and a status bar that tells you what you currently have selected. Off to the right here, in their dockable windows, which is cool, is the content library. And I'm going to load up a content library that I had previously saved. Okay, so this content library then saves, this is the whole library of stuff that we could possibly add into our scene. And while I'm talking about it, I'm going to compile it. So I pressed F6, which is just a shortcut to go into the build content menu. And it's going to go away for a little bit and come back. Now, what it's doing here behind the scenes is compiling, as Diane described, into the runtime compatible format. So these are raw assets, and in some cases these are bitmaps, these are terrain height maps, this is an animated model, a bunch of fonts and a bunch of shaders, and I'm compiling all of that stuff on the fly. Future work also would allow me to save out, and of course it does write all of that stuff to disk, so to be able to save out and transport those pre-compiled assets so that you didn't have to, you could take those as is with your scene file and then literally use them directly into a game. So now that all that code is added, I'm going to add a bit of content. So I'm simply right-clicking on the content item. Notice that there's nothing in the scene except for a series of a hierarchy that said, hey, actors, animated actors, dynamic actors, sprites, and strings. Let me add some text to the screen. All right, so I'm going to change that text to hello world, and I'm going to move its position down a little bit. And you can see that I'm getting real-time editing here within the world. Then let me add a model, and that model's pretty big. So I want to move that guy around, and I'm going to do that with the scale tool. So I'm going to scale down, and of course you can see his bounding box. That's a reference grid that you're seeing there in the middle, and I can turn that reference grid on or off, and I can turn the frames counter on and off as well, so I can see that it's doing that. Now let me show you the scale piece for the Wiimote, and with the Wiimote, and I can be in any orientation really. So I'm just doing these tank driving controls to scale backwards and forward. Now, to be honest with you, and I'll speak to this a little bit more. The Wiimote controls, this was kind of keeping up with the Joneses, where everybody else was doing something with 3D UI, feeling left out a little bit. I don't know how useful this really is. I think it's an interesting idea to be able to do scene development from using the Wiimote, but right now it was an afterthought, so it's really not. I would not use this as the principal form of input.
But it's certainly a step in that direction.
Absolutely. So now that I've got this guy selected, I'm going to translate him. So I'm going to translate him. Right now he's moving only in X and Y, but if I hold one of the modifier keys down, this is Shift, and I'm moving Z. And you can see that his position, you may be able to see that on the right-hand side, in the property grid is modifying as well. And I can move him in the Y, or I can clamp him only in the X plane. For the Wiimote, same deal. Okay, so I'm steering, I'm either, so I'm moving him around the screen, or I can clamp him in one particular axis. That's the A button that I'm holding down, or this is the X axis, and I'm steering, or this is the Z axis. Which is pretty intuitive, but still kind of, how useful is it? And then finally is rotation. Oops. Rotation, let me actually, come back here. Let me get forward on here a little bit. And rotation. So this is tank driving again. And if I can do pitch or yaw. And likewise with the mouse. I can, by default, I'm in both axes, or I can clamp on a particular rotation and just do pitch or just do yaw. That's not it. There's more. These are animated actors. So the animated actor is kind of cool. You can if this guy actually only has one animation, but if he had multiple animations, this drop-down list on the right-hand side would show all of the animations that he could possibly play. So this is a nice object previewer. Even without the idea of building a whole scene here, this is a really great previewer for the models that you have, for the animations that might be playing. So this is a really nice previewer. And of course, I have all the same freedom to rotate or translate this guy like I do the other pieces. And I can add more dudes, and they're on their own, and they have their own. And I can move him around and rotate him, so now we have several dudes. And you can see that these guys show up in their own unique places, and as I cruise through them, you can see that the selection pieces are changing. And there's my ship. Textures, I can add a texture to the scene. So that's just the 2D sprite. And I can change that sprite's data. I can say, all right, maybe I want him to be over here a little bit. And I can even change his size. So if I want his size, I can stretch him. I can move him around. And I can even give him a velocity, which is kind of cool. So it's running a full-blown update loop, so I can actually move the sprites around and get an idea of how it might move.
Are those dudes?
Yeah, those are dudes.
Dudes.
Move him back up there again. And of course I can delete that stuff out. And then terrain. This is interesting. So the terrain height map, let's add that, is actually edited through the scene. So the scene up here has the ability to be full screen or not full screen. I can specify the aspect ratio. These are the global settings of our scene. And I can specify the terrain that's associated with it. So I'm going to specify, notice that when I click on that drop-down list, the height map that it's displaying are only coming from the content library that I have. So it's only going to show me the stuff that's available that has already been added to the content library. So there's my height map, and here's my my texture. Oh, let me add another texture. Okay, and I need to compile that. The compilation, it was really fast that time because it remembered that it already compiled all the other assets. And scene, there we go. Okay, so there's our terrain. Okay, and of course I can look around, and that is actually from a height map, just on the fly, adding it to the scene. And of course I can save all this stuff out. I can save the scene as, I'll save it as scene 1.